unicorns are just a marketing gimmick? All right, buckle up, because we're about to unravel the mythology of the high-value man. You've heard the term, right? It's the modern-day Excalibur, the ultimate goal in the chaotic battlefield of dating. But what is a high-value man? And why is everyone acting like spotting one is as rare as finding a Rolex at a thrift store? Let's break it down using Kevin Samuels' definition. A man whose views polarize the internet more effectively than pineapple on pizza. According to the late infamous guru of self-worth, a high-value man is defined by 6 core pillars: income, 6 figures or more annually, consistently over at least 3 to 5 years. In short, this guy isn't just getting by, he's buying the bar tab and tipping the bartender with your rent money. Network. He's surrounded by other high-value men. Birds of a feather flock together, and apparently, they also drive matching BMWs. Visibility, he's recognized by his peers and his community as a man of value. Translation, when he walks into a room, people notice. Utility, he's useful to the group. He's the guy you call when you need connections, advice, or someone to casually donate to your startup. Consistency, none of this counts if it's a one-hit wonder situation. He's proven himself time and again. Morality, this one's optional, but hey, who doesn't like a guy who's rich and ethical? Sounds pretty straightforward, right? Wrong. Because what this definition fails to mention is how impossibly high the bar has been set. Statistically speaking, less than 10% of men in the US make 6 figures. And among those, how many are also fit, charming, and ready to settle down? You'd have better luck finding a needle in a haystack made of other needles. And yet, women are told this is the standard. It's like the world collectively agreed that anything less than a high-value man is a consolation prize. The guy who's kind, stable, and loves dogs. Sorry, buddy, you're invisible. Why? Because the high-value man is supposed to have it all. He's tall, he's wealthy, he's got abs you could grate cheese on, and of course, he's emotionally intelligent enough to cry during Pixar movies. This is the man society says women should be holding out for. But let's get real for a second. What's the actual value of a high-value man? Is it his ability to provide financial security, his social clout, or is it the fantasy, the idea that being with him elevates your own status? Because here's the secret no one likes to admit. High-value men aren't just a goal, they're a status symbol. They're the Birkin bag of relationships, and don't think guys are off the hook here. Men have been fed the same narrative, but in reverse. Want to be desired? Get rich, get fit, and drive a car that costs more than your mom's house. But what happens when you finally check all those boxes? Are you happy, fulfilled, or just exhausted from holding up the facade? Here's the harsh truth. High-value men come with high stakes. These guys aren't living some carefree bachelor dream. They're under constant pressure to maintain their status. If they falter, lose the job, gain a few pounds, or God forbid, show vulnerability, the world moves on. In the words of Kevin Samuels himself, men are only as valuable as their last performance. So let me ask you this. Do you really want to be a high-value man, or are you just trying to live up to someone else's definition of success? And ladies, is your dream guy truly a high-value man, or just someone who treats you like you're valuable? The takeaway here? The concept of high value is only as real as the value you assign to it. Maybe it's time we all stop chasing unicorns and start appreciating the real, imperfect people around us. After all, isn't the point of life to find value in the chaos, not to check off boxes on a spreadsheet? The Hypergamy Olympics, women chasing high-value men. Let's dive into the other half of this delightful mess, the women. Specifically, the ones who've turned dating into the Hypergamy Olympics. For the uninitiated, hypergamy is the idea of marrying up. You know, upgrading from the guy who Venmo requests you for $4 lattes to the one with a yacht and a trust fund. Or sounds like a solid plan, except everyone's trying to marry up and there aren't enough yachts to go around. Here's the thing. Social media, rom-coms, and every Kardashian ever have convinced women that high-value men are the only men worth their time. We're talking about the 6'2" corporate alpha males who rid Nietzsche for fun, deadlift 400 pounds, and drive a car so expensive that it doesn't even have cup holders because rich people don't drink big gulps, apparently. And it's not just Instagram models or influencers chasing these guys. Nope, even your average girl next door thinks she deserves a high-value man. Why? Because society keeps telling her she does. Swipe through TikTok and it's a parade of boss babes manifesting their dream guy. But here's the kicker. They're not manifesting a guy they're compatible with. They're manifesting a walking tax bracket with abs. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine 100 women in a room. 80% of them are all competing for the same 10 men. the ones with the looks, the money, and the charisma. Or meanwhile, the other 90 men in the room, the ones who are solid, dependable, and maybe just a little socially awkward, they're standing around like NPCs in a video game, completely ignored. Why? Because apparently kindness and loyalty don't photograph well for Instagram. But here's where it gets funny. These women think they're dating up, but let me break it to you. Those high-value men, they're not settling down. Why would they? They're playing life on God mode. They've got options and commitment isn't on the menu. What's on the menu is a rotation of women who all think they're the exception. Spoiler alert, they're not. And before anyone accuses me of bashing women, let's be clear, this isn't about shaming women for wanting what they want. It's about the reality check. Chasing high-value men isn't just a tough game, it's an unwinnable one. These guys are like limited edition sneakers, everyone wants them, but only a few can afford the price, and even then, they probably don't fit. Now, let's talk about what happens when these women don't get their high-value man. It's not like they suddenly pivot to appreciating the regular value men. Or nope, they go through a phase of blaming men in general. Men are trash, they say, and you, my friend, are standing there thinking, but I'm over here recycling and paying for dinner. What gives? What gives is this. Society has created a fantasy where women think they deserve the best of the best without realizing that the best is a mirage. It's not real. The high-value man they're chasing is likely overworked, emotionally unavailable, and juggling a dozen other women who also think they're wifey material. Meanwhile, the regular value man, he's the one who'll actually remember your birthday, pick up soup when you're sick, and maybe even build you a bookshelf from IKEA. But hey, why go for that when you can aim for the guy who might text you back once a week between board meetings and bench presses? So what's the takeaway here? For the ladies, if you're chasing a high-value man, just know the odds are not in your favor. And even if you win, it might not be the prize you think it is. That guy isn't looking for a partner. He's looking for someone who won't complain when he cancels dinner for the third time this week. And for the men, don't let this discourage you. If you're not a high-value man by society's ridiculous standards, guess what? You're still valuable. Being a good man, a real man, isn't about money, looks, or status. It's about character. And let me tell you, character doesn't swipe left or right. It sticks around, builds trust, and actually matters. So let the hypergamy athletes keep chasing their gold medals. Meanwhile, you can sit back, live your life, and focus on being the kind of person who doesn't need validation from Instagram likes or six-figure paychecks. Or trust me, it's a much better game to play. The reality of being a high-value man, all that glitters isn't gold. Being a high-value man sounds like the dream, right? Women lining up, respect from your peers, life served to you on a silver platter. But let's pull back the curtain on this supposed golden ticket. Spoiler alert, it's not all private jets and six-pack selfies. In fact, being a high-value man comes with its own set of unique headaches, ones you might not envy once you know the truth. First, let's address the myth. High-value men have it easy. False. If you're a high-value man or striving to be one, your life is essentially a full-time performance. You've got to stay at the top of your game, constantly proving your worth, not just to women, but to everyone around you. Miss a beat, lose a client, or heaven forbid, gain a little weight, and suddenly the world starts looking at you like you're yesterday's news. Being high value isn't just about having the goods, it's about maintaining them. And that's exhausting. You've got to work insane hours to keep that big paycheck rolling in. You've got to hit the gym like it's a second job because God forbid you lose your V-shaped torso. And on top of that, you've got to be charming, witty, emotionally intelligent, and somehow keep up with the mental gymnastics required to date women who are all vying for your attention. And let's talk about that dating pool for a second. Yes, high-value men have their pick of the litter. But here's the dirty secret. Having options doesn't necessarily make you happy. When you're seen as the prize, most of your interactions become transactional. Or everyone wants something from you, your time, your money, your status. Genuine connection, it's rarer than a unicorn with Wi-Fi. Think about it. If you're a high-value man, you've got women falling over themselves to impress you, but how many of them actually care about you? Or how many know your favorite movie or even ask about your day? Spoiler, probably not many. They're too busy trying to show you why they're worthy. It's exhausting. Our high-value men often end up feeling more like a trophy than a person. And let's be honest, being someone else's bragging right gets old real quick. Then there's the pressure to upgrade. When you're living at the top of the pyramid, society constantly tells you that there's always something or someone better out there. A younger woman, a faster car, a bigger house. High-value men are stuck on a treadmill of what's next because the moment you stop climbing, the world acts like you're falling. And don't even get me started on the bros. As a high-value man, your circle of friends often turns into a pissing contest. Everyone's comparing salaries, flexing their investments, and subtly one-upping each other over who's got the better life. It's not camaraderie, it's a competition. Sure, you've got networking events and golf games, but when was the last time one of these guys actually listened to you vent about your problems? Exactly. Here's the kicker. High-value men aren't immune to rejection either. Sure, it might not come in the form of ghosting or unreturned texts, but rejection hits differently at the top. Maybe you're not family-oriented enough. Maybe your work-life balance is a mess. Or maybe, just maybe, someone decides that they don't care about your six-figure income because you're emotionally unavailable. It stings, doesn't it? So before you start idolizing the high-value man lifestyle, ask yourself, is it worth the cost? Because there is a cost. It's not just the money or the time, it's the constant pressure to stay on top, the shallow relationships, and the loneliness that comes from being seen as a commodity instead of a person. And for the guys who aren't high value by these insane standards, guess what? You're not missing out as much as you think. You've got something most high-value men would kill for: freedom. The freedom to be yourself, to connect with people who actually care, and to live a life that's not dictated by someone else's expectations. So before you start grinding yourself into dust to climb the pyramid, ask yourself if the view from the top is really worth the climb. Or spoiler alert, it probably isn't. Women chasing the unicorn, the fantasy of the high-value man, the chase for the elusive high-value man. For some women, it's less of a dating goal and more of a full-contact sport. The Instagram feeds, the manifestation journals, the Pinterest boards filled with vacation homes they're going to share with this dream guy. It's a tale as old as time, except now it comes with motivational TikToks and luxury handbag unboxing videos. Or here's the kicker. Most women aren't chasing a man, they're chasing a lifestyle. The high-value man isn't just a partner, he's a walking, talking 6-foot ATM with a jawline sharp enough to cut glass. He's the guy who's going to whisk her off to Bali, buy her a Birkin, and somehow still have time to emotionally validate her 24/7. It's Cinderella, except now Prince Charming has to make 7 figures and own a condo with an infinity pool. But let's get real for a second. The fantasy doesn't match the reality. For one, there just aren't enough high-value men to go around. As Kevin Samuels famously pointed out, you're looking at a tiny sliver of the population, men earning top-tier income, fit, attractive, emotionally intelligent, and somehow still willing to commit. It's the equivalent of every guy thinking he's going to end up with Margot Robbie. Statistically, not happening. And here's where it gets spicy. The women chasing these men often have their own checklist of demands, but what's on offer? A good personality, a fun sense of humor, being able to cook pasta from a box? While they're out here searching for a unicorn, they're bringing vibes that scream, takeout queen with a Netflix subscription. Now, this isn't to throw shade at women who have standards. Standards are great. The problem arises when those standards turn into a Disney princess wish list, divorced from reality. The high-value man these women idolize doesn't exist in the form they imagine. If he's successful, he's likely working 60-hour weeks. If he's attractive, he's got options, which means competition. And if he's both, well, good luck keeping his attention when there are a dozen other women texting him, "Hey you," at 2 a.m. Oh, and let's not forget, if a woman does catch her high-value man, the work isn't over. No. That's when the real challenge begins, keeping him. Because let's be honest, a high-value man is used to getting what he wants. If the relationship feels even slightly inconvenient, he's got a Rolodex of replacements waiting in the wings. And guess what? He probably won't hesitate to use it. But here's the darkest twist of all. Some women don't even like the high-value man. Or not really. What they like is the idea of him, the status, the envy from their friends, the Instagrammable lifestyle. And that's why so many of these relationships fizzle out. Because at the end of the day, you're not dating a concept, you're dating a person. And if the only thing keeping the relationship afloat is his ability to fund your designer shoe addiction, well, don't be surprised when it capsizes. Here's the takeaway. Chasing a high-value man isn't inherently wrong, but the obsession with idealized versions of people is a losing game. Relationships are built on shared values, mutual respect, and real connection, not just on how good someone looks in a tux or how fat their wallet is. The sooner we stop romanticizing this caricature of success, the sooner we can get back to reality and maybe even build something that lasts. So, for the women out there with their eyes on the prize, here's a challenge. Ask yourself, do you want a partner or a provider? Because if it's the latter, that's fine. Just don't expect a fairy tale ending. And for the guys listening to this thinking, yeah, take that, ladies, don't get too comfortable. We're coming for you next. Men, stop idolizing the high-value man archetype. You're not Andrew Tate. All right, gentlemen, it's time we turn the mirror on ourselves. Because while women are out there chasing their high-value unicorn, a lot of you are idolizing the idea of being one. Yeah, I see you in the comments clutching your top G mugs and parroting, if you're not driving a Bugatti, you're failing at life. Spoiler alert, you're not Andrew Tate, and that's okay. You probably don't want to be. The idea of the high-value man has mutated into this ridiculous caricature. The guy who crushes it at work, dates supermodels, owns multiple properties, and wakes up at 5 a.m. to drink raw eggs before bench pressing a small car. He's not just successful, he's borderline invincible. But here's the kicker, it's all a performance. Let's break it down. The so-called high-value man is often portrayed as someone who lives a life of unrelenting grind. He's working 80-hour weeks to rake in cash, hitting the gym twice a day to sculpt his Adonis-like physique, and somehow still has time to game women with his unparalleled confidence. Sounds exhausting, right? That's because it is. You're out here trying to live like a Wall Street wolf, but most of you don't even like working late nights at your current desk job. You think being a high-value man is about driving a Lambo and throwing cash around, but it's not. It's about sacrificing your time, your relationships, and often your mental health. And let's not forget the biggest trap of all, status symbols. You're obsessing over Rolex watches and Gucci loafers to signal your worth, but here's the truth. Most people don't care. That luxury car you're leasing at 12% APR, it's impressive for about 5 seconds until everyone realizes you're using it to mask your crippling insecurity. Meanwhile, the guys who actually have money are wearing $40 New Balance sneakers because they're too busy living their lives to flex on Instagram. Oh, and speaking of Instagram, can we talk about the toxic influence of social media? The so-called high-value lifestyle is perfectly curated for likes, but you're not seeing the full picture. For every yacht party, there's a guy stressing about his quarterly earnings. For every shredded gym selfie, there's someone eating plain chicken breast for the 9th meal in a row. It's not glamorous, it's miserable. And yet so many men fall for this trap. You start believing that unless you're earning 6 figures, dating a supermodel, and owning 3 businesses, you're a failure. Here's the harsh truth. Most of you will never hit those metrics, and that's fine. Life isn't about ticking off some arbitrary checklist. It's about living authentically on your terms. What's ironic is that the actual high-value men aren't even following this script. They're building meaningful relationships, staying true to their passions, and balancing ambition with fulfillment. They're not losing sleep over their follower count or trying to one-up some random guy in the comment section. They're too busy winning at life by their own definition. So here's the advice, fellas. Stop chasing this imaginary high-value status and start focusing on what makes you valuable. Maybe you're great at your job, maybe you're an amazing dad, or maybe you're the guy everyone calls when they need a laugh. That's real value, not the shallow manufactured image that Instagram influencers are selling you. Let's cut the BS. You don't need a mansion, a six-pack, or a private jet to be successful. You just need to know who you are, what you want, and how to get there without losing your mind or your soul. And if that doesn't feel high value enough, remember this. The happiest people aren't the ones with the most, but the ones who need the least. So put down the Self-Help Guru podcast, step off the treadmill, and ask yourself, what do I actually want out of life? Chances are it's not a Bugatti, and if it is, well, good luck with those payments. Women chasing unicorns, the high-value man delusion, ladies, let's have a little chat. While the men are out there grinding themselves into an early grave chasing the high-value man fantasy, you're on the other side of the equation chasing a man who might not even exist. That's right, we're talking about your obsession with the mythical creature known as the high-value man. A 6 feet 2 inches, emotionally intelligent, billionaire philanthropist with a jawline that could slice a steak and a six-pack carved by Michelangelo himself. Here's a question for you. Do you realize how absurdly specific this fantasy is? You're not just looking for a partner, you're looking for a Marvel superhero who also volunteers at animal shelters on weekends. And why stop there? Let's throw in a yacht, fluent Italian, and a love for long walks on the Amalfi Coast. That's the dream, right? But here's the thing, you're not the only one looking for him. Every other woman is too. This guy? He's the last piece of pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving dinner, and everyone's trying to grab him before grandma does. It's no wonder your dating apps are full of disappointment. You're sifting through hundreds of nice guys looking for a unicorn, and then you're surprised when they don't measure up. Let's break down the math for a second. According to statistics, less than 15% of men are over 6 feet tall. Now add in the requirement for financial success. Depending on where you live, only about 10% of men earn 6 figures. And out of that group, how many are also emotionally available, great in bed, love their mothers, and don't have a crippling addiction to crypto trading? Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, every man on Instagram with a suit and a leased luxury car is pretending to be that guy. And guess what? Most of them are faking it. You're not swiping on high-value men, you're swiping on high-value scammers. That guy who's always posting from exotic locations, he's probably in debt up to his eyeballs. That entrepreneur with $1 million smile, he sells Herbalife and lives in his mom's basement. The harsh reality is this: the more hyper-specific your criteria, the smaller your dating pool becomes. And when you're hyper-focused on the idea of high value, you miss out on all the genuinely good guys who don't fit the Instagram-ready mold. You know, the ones who might not own a yacht, but would happily build you a treehouse in the backyard. The ones who prioritize loyalty, kindness, and actually showing up when it matters. But no, those guys aren't flashy enough. They don't have the wow factor you think you deserve. And let's be honest, social media isn't helping. Your feed is filled with influencers flaunting their picture-perfect relationships with their high-value partners. And you're left wondering why you're stuck with Greg, or who still can't figure out how to load the dishwasher. What you don't see is that Mr. High Value just blew up at her for taking too long to order at Starbucks. Fun times, right? Ladies, it's time for a reality check. Chasing the high-value man is like chasing a rainbow. You're never going to catch it, and even if you do, you're just going to find out it's a bunch of refracted light. Meanwhile, you're walking past perfectly good partners because they don't shine brightly enough. So here's the deal. Stop trying to secure the bag and start focusing on securing a bond. Maybe he doesn't have a six-pack, but he makes you laugh until your stomach hurts. Maybe he's not a millionaire, but he'd drive across the country just to help you move. Those are the guys worth your time. Not the ones trying to convince you they're the next Elon Musk while still borrowing gas money. In the end, the perfect man isn't the one who checks every box on your list. He's the one who doesn't make you feel like you're settling. And if that sounds too simple, maybe it's time to stop complicating things. The high-value paradox: if everyone's special, no one is. Here's a fun twist in the story. Boys and girls, if everyone became a high-value man tomorrow, no one would be. Or that's the paradox. The moment you democratize exclusivity, it ceases to be exclusive. It's like handing out participation trophies for winning the Olympics. If everyone's on the podium, what's the point? Let's say tomorrow every guy wakes up 6 feet tall, earning 6 figures, with abs you could grate cheese on. Guess what happens next? The standards change. Suddenly, 6 feet isn't enough, you better be 6 feet 4 inches. 6 figures? Or not unless there's a 7 in front of it. And abs? Now they're looking for biceps the size of tree trunks and a jawline that can cut glass. Women will start demanding things like can juggle flaming swords or fluently speaks dolphin. This isn't just conjecture, it's human psychology. People are hardwired to seek out what's rare, what stands out. The scarcity principle isn't just for diamonds and concert tickets, it's for people too. The more something is perceived as hard to get, the more desirable it becomes. That's why a guy who's aloof and unavailable suddenly becomes everyone's crush. He's the metaphorical limited edition sneaker drop. Here's the kicker. Most of you don't actually want to be high-value men. Not really. You just want the perks without the pressure. You want the respect, the attention, the Instagram likes. But you don't want the 14-hour workdays, the endless hustle, or the constant paranoia that someone younger, taller, and flashier is nipping at your heels, because being high value is like running on a treadmill that never stops. And if you stumble, even for a second, you're done. Next up in the queue, please. And for the women chasing high-value men, well, the same treadmill applies. Because once you get him, you have to keep him. And keeping him means competing with every other woman who's also chasing him. You're not dating a man, you're dating his options. It's exhausting, unsustainable, and let's be honest, kind of soul-sucking. The whole game is a setup. Society has sold you on this idea that if you're not high value, you're worthless, that you either stand out or you disappear. But here's the truth. Most people are average. Statistically, you're probably average, and there's nothing wrong with that. Our average people find love, build families, and live fulfilling lives every single day. You don't need to be a 10 to be happy. You just need to be a solid you. So instead of chasing the mythical high-value status, maybe start chasing self-awareness. Ask yourself, what do you actually want out of life? Because if the answer is peace, connection, and a little bit of happiness, you don't need to be high value for that. You just need to be real. The real MVPs, building value where it matters. All right, gentlemen, let's pivot to some real talk. Forget about high-value men for a second. Let's talk about actual value. Not the kind you flex on Instagram, but the kind that makes your life meaningful and maybe, just maybe, makes you a person worth knowing. Because while women might be chasing high-value men, and high-value men might be chasing their next dopamine hit, you could be doing something far more important, building value that actually lasts. Step 1, stop outsourcing your worth. The first first mistake most people make, men and women, is defining themselves based on how others perceive them. It's like trying to quench your thirst by licking someone else's glass of water. Instagram followers, expensive watches, or a Tinder profile that screams, "I have a boat." All that stuff is external validation. It's empty calories. Real value comes from the things that don't need an audience, mastering a skill, pursuing a passion, or simply being someone people can rely on. Step 2, get your life together, not for women, but for yourself. There's this pervasive idea that self-improvement is just a means to an end, and the end is always getting laid. Stop that. Become the kind of man you want to hang out with. That means paying your bills on time, learning to cook a meal that doesn't involve a microwave, and maybe, just maybe, reading a book once in a while. Not for clout, but because a well-fed, well-read man is a force to be reckoned with. Step 3, understand that relationships aren't about status, they're about substance. Sure, women might initially be drawn to the guy with the Rolex, the six-pack, and the six-figure salary, but those things are like cotton candy, sweet, flashy, and ultimately hollow. What keeps people around is your ability to connect, to communicate, and to care. Can you hold a conversation that doesn't involve you bragging? Can you listen without just waiting for your turn to speak? Or can you show up when it matters? These are the real metrics of value, and they can't be bought. Step 4, play the long game. Or the truth is, value isn't built overnight. It's not a one-time transformation. It's a daily practice. And the goal isn't to impress someone else, it's to become someone who impresses himself. Because when you're genuinely proud of the person you've become, the right people will naturally gravitate towards you. You won't have to chase, you'll attract. And here's the kicker, the women chasing the idea of a high-value man, the ones who are fixated on status and bank accounts, let them go. They're not your audience. Build a life that attracts people who value you for who you are, not what you have. Or trust me, that's the real win. So fellas, stop worrying about being high value in the Instagram sense and start worrying about being valuable in the human sense. Because at the end of the day, your life isn't a stock market and your worth isn't measured in likes or swipes. It's measured in the kind of person you are when no one's watching. The illusion of options, women chasing unicorns. All right, now let's flip the script. We've talked about what high-value men are or aren't, but let's address the other side of the equation, women chasing this mythical unicorn of perfection. Spoiler alert, just like men believing they can become a 10 by buying a Ferrari, women are falling into their own trap. Here's the deal. The idea of a high-value man has created an illusion of endless options. Social media, dating apps, and pop culture are out here selling this fantasy of the rich, tall, ripped, charming, emotionally available guy who also loves puppies and never misses leg day. Or he's a CEO, a philanthropist, and probably knows how to mix the perfect Negroni. Basically, a Disney prince, but with a gym membership and a yacht. But the truth is, unicorns don't exist. What these women are chasing isn't a man, it's an Instagram filter. And the guys who even come close to this ideal, they know they're rare and they're not in a rush to settle down. Why would they be? If every woman on earth is throwing themselves at these dudes, do you really think they're scrolling Zillow looking for a cozy suburban home to retire in? Now, let's be clear. Women aren't the enemy here. They're just as much victims of this fantasy as men are. They're being told by society, magazines, and influencers that they deserve the best. That settling for anything less than their dream guy is a betrayal of their self-worth. And who can blame them for believing it? The world keeps reinforcing this narrative that they can have it all, a high-value man, a perfect family, and their own six-figure career with a side hustle making artisanal candles. But here's the dark twist. When everyone's chasing the top 1%, no one's happy. Women are frustrated because they feel like they can't find a guy who measures up. Men are bitter because they're being ignored for not fitting the impossible checklist. And the actual high-value men, they're out there enjoying the buffet of attention with zero intention of committing to anyone. It's a lose-lose situation. So what's the takeaway here? For the ladies, it's this. Be realistic about what you want and what you're offering. You don't need a six-figure bank account or a guy who looks like he was sculpted by Michelangelo. You need someone who respects you, makes you laugh, and doesn't ghost you because he got bored. And for the men, stop being salty about not being picked. If someone's chasing a fantasy, let them. It's not your job to convince anyone of your worth. The truth is, most of us are better off finding someone who matches our own vibe rather than reaching for the stars and complaining when they're out of reach. Because at the end of the day, a unicorn isn't a real animal, and neither is a high-value man. So, ladies, keep your standards high, but your expectations grounded. And men, keep your dignity intact and your focus on your own growth. Life's too short to chase fairy tales when there's real connection to be found. Reality check, redefining value in a world of illusions. Let's wrap this up, gentlemen, because if you've made it this far, congratulations, you've endured a masterclass in sarcasm, sprinkled with bitter truths and some very awkward laughs. But now it's time for the ultimate reality check. Here's the uncomfortable truth. High-value men, as the internet defines them, are a myth. They're the adult equivalent of the tooth fairy, something you believed in until life hit you with a dose of hard reality. The same goes for women's never-ending quest for the one. And honestly, none of us are getting out of this game unscathed. But let's get real. What actually makes someone valuable? It's not your height, your paycheck, or whether you can do 100 push-ups without breaking a sweat. Value comes from what you bring to the table, not just in terms of success, but in terms of character, effort, and connection. Here's a little homework. Take a good hard look in the mirror. Ask yourself, am I the kind of person I'd want to date? If the answer is no, then buddy, we've got some work to do. But don't panic. You're not alone. The majority of people are out here faking it until they make it, chasing the illusion of perfection instead of working on what really matters. For the men, the takeaway is this. Stop measuring yourself by a list of shallow metrics. Sure, it's great to be successful, fit, and confident, but those things mean nothing if you're insufferable to be around. Focus on being genuine, dependable, and someone who can actually hold a conversation without mentioning how much you can bench. And for the women, a bit of advice, take a step back from the I deserve the best mindset. Yes, you deserve to be loved and respected, but so does everyone else. The perfect man doesn't exist, just like the perfect woman doesn't. What does exist is someone who complements your life and grows with you, not someone who checks off every box on your list of demands. At the end of the day, life isn't about chasing unicorns or trying to squeeze yourself into a mold of what society tells you is valuable. It's about finding the people who see your quirks and flaws and choose you anyway. That's where the real magic happens, not in some filtered Instagram fantasy, but in the messy, awkward, beautiful chaos of real connection. So here's the challenge, fellas. Stop chasing labels, stop chasing illusions, and start building your own value. Not to impress anyone else, but to become someone you can be proud of. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find someone who sees that value and decides you're worth chasing too. Mic drop. The final word, who cares about unicorns anyway? All right, here's the final word. You made it. You survived this roast of modern dating culture, the myth of the high-value man, and the wild goose chase for perfection. Give yourself a pat on the back, you've earned it. Or, pour yourself a drink. You deserve that too. Let's be brutally honest for a second. None of this matters as much as you think it does. High-value men, high-value women, it's all marketing. A shiny sticker slapped onto human beings to sell you an illusion of what you should be striving for. And the real kicker? Most of the people preaching this nonsense are either miserable, fake, or trying to sell you a course. Here's the truth. Life is messy, relationships are hard, and the people worth keeping around don't come with labels or a perfect resume. They come with quirks, baggage, and the ability to laugh at themselves and maybe at you too. And that's okay. So stop chasing unicorns. Let go of the checklist, the height requirements, the six-figure expectations, and whatever other nonsense you've been brainwashed into thinking is non-negotiable. Because guess what? At the end of the day, we're all just a bunch of slightly flawed, awkward humans looking for someone to share the chaos with.